Good day, I'm Junior Researcher Adam Southgate, and today's lecture will be covering the Fey Sphere's Skinner Fairies. I'd appreciate that all hunters please subscribe as to not miss any future lectures, and also if you enjoy the lecture and find it informative, please like the video and click the bell to ensure you do not miss any future announcements. I would also be very happy to hear your thoughts, views, and stories of your own interactions with the monsters of the spheres in the comment area of this video. Also, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. So, to begin, as always, we'll start with our general announcements. Firstly, we are still attempting to summarize all the damage done during the attempted defense of the dragon, and we'll have a more detailed breakdown of the events next week. Secondly, it has come to the Order's attention that a worryingly high number of hunters have resorted to the use of Celtic knots tattooed onto their bodies. While these symbols do empower a hunter, giving them abilities somewhat outside the norm, we believe this power is derived from the Fey sphere, and is most likely attached to a specific powerful Fey. We understand that hunters wish to use any advantage at their disposal, however we theorize that by using the knots you are inadvertently making use of an ancient Fey pact. This may very well mean that you are binding yourself to an unknown Fey entity, whose motivations are unknown to us. The Order has been studying these Celtic knots for some time, as they appear to have been widely used by the Celtic people before the arrival of Merlin. From our research, they appear to predate the arrival of Anthra within our sphere. We have attempted to gain information on the knots from Anthra, however he remains as obtuse as always, though this may be simply due to the fact that he doesn't know, which is a horrifying thought in and of itself. Thirdly, the Morganian Conclave have been attempting to once again push into Wales from Avalon. Typically isolated upon their island that is both within and without our sphere, they have made landfall at Amlech. This really couldn't have come at a worse time. Due to the recent defense of Dry Goch, we are exhausted and low on material to fight against them. We have attempted to contact the KSG for aid, however they stated that due to our long and bloody history with the Conclave, the English KSG refuses to become involved in what they see as an internal conflict. The Welsh government is also remaining neutral, as they see the Conclave as simply another version of ourselves, and as they are taking steps not to reveal themselves to the general public just as we do, they aren't breaking any of the old laws. The head druid has decided to implement the fire break strategy to allow our forces to recover before we attempt a full-scale counterattack. This will require several raids upon Conclave forces to slow their advance. Simply put, we are going to attempt to hold them in Anglesey, not allowing them to enter the rest of Wales. To this end, we will need hunters of journeyman rank to master rank to volunteer for the raids. It must be noted that the Conclave are heavily tied to the Fey sphere, often making pacts and utilizing Fey magics, and we are low on cold iron weaponry at current. This will not be an easy operation, but it will allow the majority of hunters to recuperate and rearm. Before we discuss the Skinner Fairies, we must first establish the two larger groups that are Fairies and Pixies. The two are closely linked with each other and would be considered subspecies if such a thing were applicable when discussing true Fey entities. From what we can tell through our research, they were at one point all simply different variations of fairies. However, a single individual displeased a more powerful Fey entity that cursed them, tearing off their wings. While within our sphere, such an act would only affect the individual, to Fey it instead affected all fairies that were connected to that one fairy. All species of fairies possess natural wings that allow them to fly, while pixies do not. Instead, they all have upon their backs from birth two large scars running down from the base of their necks to the bottoms of their backs. Many different pixie groups have attempted to compensate for this lack of wings in a variety of different ways, from taming birds to ride to constructing simple gliders. This is because all pixies feel the need to fly. It is ingrained within them, just as it is within fairies that they should be in the air. It is in fact believed that this need was left within pixies as an extension of their punishment. While fairies are a varied group in terms of intelligence, with some being above humans and others being akin to animals, pixies are all sentient and are a similar intelligence to an 8-year-old child. We believe that this is based on the intelligence of the original group of fairies that were cursed. This would also mean that they have not existed in this form for all that long on an evolutionary scale, if that is even applicable, as you would expect to see some variation in intelligence between different kinds of pixies by this point. There is another theory, however, that posits that the universal level of intelligence amongst pixies is part of the curse, so that they can always comprehend what they have lost. Both fairies and pixies possess differing levels of magics that allow them to do what would be impossible within our sphere normally, such as the cuckoo fairy's glamour. Both fairies and pixies have been noted changing the form of living things, though on a smaller scale when compared to more powerful fae, creating madness in human minds, mildly warping reality to suit their needs, and even, in some cases, creating simple pacts. While to a more powerful fae being, such magics are as simple as breathing, to fairies and pixies they are extremely exhausting. However, many of these creatures will use their magics in concert with each other, lessening the strain on the individual. The main difference between the two, apart from the lack of wings, is that when all is taken into account, pixies are more overtly twisted than fairies due to the madness brought on by their lack of wings. The name Skinner Fairy is a misnomer, as Skinner Fairies are actually pixies. The confusion came due to the original sighting of the entities, where they were recorded as having wings. Thus, they were placed within the fairy category. What was initially missed was the fact that these wings were not the silken gossamer of the fairy, and instead the enchanted, flayed skin of the pixies themselves. What was first believed to be body paint covering them from the neck down was in fact their skinless form. This is known as the Agored, a coming-of-age ceremony participated in by all Skinner fairies once they reach maturity. For Skinner fairies, like all pixie species, to come of age is a point in the individual's life where they ask their first question. Interestingly, pixies' ability to question the world around them comes later in life, typically around the age of 8 years. Before this point, they will wholeheartedly believe anything that is told to them without question, even if it contradicts what they observe. Now, you may rightfully be thinking that to flay your child is monstrous, and to a human perspective, this is true. However, Skinner fairies have an interesting quirk. Just like with all pixies, the need to fly within Skinner fairies, or more accurately the need for wings, is so great that the process of the Agored is happily undergone, even desperately sought after. This is exacerbated by the fact that their experience of pain and pleasure is reversed. To a Skinner fairy, the Agored is the greatest moment in their lives, both in terms of them finally gaining their wings, but also as it brings them to the height of ecstasy. Now that the more gruesome element has been discussed, we can move on to their society, which is broken up into thousands of different clans. These clans, typically containing around 1,000 members, are transitory in nature, as they are constantly changing, with members leaving and joining other clans many times throughout their lives. Instead of being based on familial lineages, these clans are more loose alliances for protection and community. However, as Fae, they become bored very easily and will move to a new clan the second they feel things have become stale. For the children who have not reached their agored, they will be left with the clan that their parents were part of when they were born, most likely never meeting their parents again. The children of Skinner Fairies survive off the unintended charity of the adults, scavenging the leftover food that the adults didn't finish due to being too full or becoming distracted and forgetting to finish. This system would mean the doom of any human civilization. However, Skinner Fairies are born far more developed than human children, being able to walk and eat solid foods. The competition between these young Fae is brutal, with only around 10% surviving, with any strategy being permitted. Obviously, many of the young never live long enough to reach their agored. However, the adults see this as a test, with those who succeed earning the right to fly. This horrific filter ensures that only the strongest, swiftest, smartest, or luckiest go on to adulthood. As adults, structure is still mostly absent. They will work together on occasion, participating in group raids against other clans or hunting for food, but otherwise they will act as solo entities. There is one larger exception to this, however, that could even be described as altruistic. Amongst these Skinner Fairies, some are born with somewhat different proclivities. These individuals do not hold a specific title and are given no special treatment within their society. However, without them, all would collapse. These individuals take on the role of shaman or teachers, and are the ones that perform the agored. Beyond this, they also teach the newly winged both how to fly and how to use their magics. This role, as stated, gains them no special privileges within their society, and often leads to them being at the very bottom, as they have less time to participate in the typical activities that gain them status. Even those directly taught by them will offer them no thanks, quickly forgetting them once they have gained all they can from them. The threat of Skinner Fairies comes in two forms, with similar results to their human victims. The first is the hunting parties. As stated, these are when loose collections of Skinner Fairies decide to hunt together. The second is the teaching expeditions, where the individual with the inclination to aid their species will take those who have recently gained their wings out to practice their magics. Both end in the same way for the most part, with the victim's demise. However, the aim is different. The first scenario is self-explanatory, however the second does require some elaboration. Skinner Fairies possess two types of magic. The first allows them to hide both themselves and anything else they do not want to be seen. The second is the ability to manipulate flesh. After choosing a victim to be used by the class, the teacher will instruct their students to hide the luckless individual from all around, making it impossible for others to perceive them. Once this is achieved, all will descend upon the individual, using their flesh manipulation to skin the victim alive. Many will see this act as simply a lesson, while others will truly believe that they are doing the victim a favor by giving them wings. Thankfully, most pass out due to shock before they can experience the terrible pain. However, some are not so fortunate. These clumsy attacks by the young Skinner Fairies can take hours to complete, however, are completely unnoticed by all around. Even when the victim has thrown objects at passers-by to get their attention, they have noticed the object but are unable to perceive where the object originated from. The ability to cut and move skin with magic is the Skinner Fairies' only true form of offense, and therefore must be learned if they are to survive, as they rely solely on a diet of meat. So, to the obvious question once again, how do we deal with them? Like with entities of the Eldritch Sphere, when dealing with the Fey Sphere's Skinner Fairies, a specific piece of equipment is required. Made relatively recently in the 1980s, the TSG are a piece of anomalous equipment utilizing the eyes of a specific unnamed Eldritch entity. Fashioned into goggles, this equipment allows the user to see through some, though not all, Fey illusions. This equipment must be used in conjunction with an MMB, as without the MMB a user would be driven mad, as you are literally seeing through the eyes of an eldritch entity, even if it is a lesser one. A pair of TSGs will rob the skin of Fairies of their ability to hide, allowing you to follow them back to their clan, where all can be effectively dealt with. Fire has proven effective, however does cause collateral damage. Our Irish counterparts have recently created an aerosolized cold iron grenade that has proven very effective in enclosed spaces. However, the user must use a mask to avoid inhaling tiny particles of cold iron. As a threat, skin of Fairies are more of a nuisance than anything else, as although they do cause deaths, they have no apocalyptic potential. They are honestly closer to a pest that must be managed more than anything else, though they are common enough that there is almost always a contract available for them. What I find fascinating about skin of Fairies is that they aren't technically sadistic. They experience the world in a very different manner than ourselves, feeling pain as pleasure and vice versa. What we would consider a deplorable act of extreme torment to them, while not exactly loving as they are self-interested by nature, could be considered benevolent. The issue is one of dramatically opposed perspectives in the truest of sense. They are fundamentally incapable of understanding why their victims scream, instead of thanking them for the attention they are giving them. Interestingly, in testing upon skin of Fairies, even compliments appear to cause them some distress. Soft fabrics and a warm environment leaves them writhing in pain, though not actually doing them any physical harm. This is the most paradoxical thing about these creatures. What they enjoy actively harms them, leading to their relatively short lives. But that will be all for today, with Arthur's might and Merlin's wisdom. Thank you.